Hi, it's Wayne from howtofish.com.au, and I've just come to the hard to say, the Maribyrnong River to do a little bit of a early morning session. I'm only going to be here for a couple of hours, and there's a good reason for that. I've come just on sunrise, which coincides with a rising tide, in fact getting towards the top of the tide. So there's a couple of hours where I think that the fishing could be okay. The conditions today won't be that great. There's a couple of things that are working against me, just in the probably the amount of light in here. The tide will start to drop after a little while, and I'm not sure that the fish will be biting quite as hard. The barometric pressure has been low for a couple of days. We've had plenty of rain. Rain might stimulate them, the water coming in might stimulate the fish, but certainly the lower barometer is probably going to keep them off the bite. So I'll see what I can winkle out. As per usual, I'll be using small hooks, light line. I don't expect there to be really big fish here. So, and because this is not far from the city at all, it's in suburbia, and it gets a lot of heavy fishing pressure. And you know, all of those things mean that the fish are pretty wary. The big fish have probably seen and tasted a hook before, so they're pretty wary about taking up a bait. So what I'll do is I'll finesse it with the light gear, small hooks, light line. The light line makes the bait move around naturally on the bottom. You know, if the fish wafts over the top of it when it's looking for food. If you've ever seen footage of fish feeding and things, you'll see that as they're moving along and they get close to the bottom, silt stirs up and things stir up on the bottom. If there's a piece of bait that doesn't stir like the rest of them, they become a bit suspicious. And if it's a place that's heavily fished, well, they're going to be pretty experienced. So I've got to get past all of that. Anyway, I'm using quite a few baits today. I've got worms. Always use worms when it's been raining, because naturally they'll wash in with the water flow in with the rain. So there'll be worms in the water. The fish will be looking for those. I'm using my spicy chicken, which is always what I use in these waters. I'll use prawn, and I'll use maggots. So I've got a bit of a selection there, and then I've got some artificial stuff, but I'll only use that as a last resort. So let's see how we go. I'm looking forward to this. I haven't been fishing for a couple of weeks, haven't had time, and I just love the early mornings. So it should be fun. So when I talk about finesse gear, I'm talking about a main line which is about, I think there's about 2.5 kilos. Tied onto that is a very fine pre-stretched trace. So that trace, which is about probably about 20 centimeters long, is then has tied onto it a size 14 hook, as you can see there. Very, very small. Okay, reason for that is it'll move naturally in the water. That line is so fine that it is not stiff like really heavy line. If I was using, you know, sort of 6 or 7 kilo line, it's stiffer. Obviously I wouldn't tie a small hook like that onto line that heavy. And the other thing is that on the bottom it won't look as natural, and it won't react as natural as this would. Tied that onto the main line. I have a line stop there, and a running sinker. Now the running sinker is a burley cage. This is a 40-gram burley cage, and I'll be putting burley in that so that when I cast out, the burley comes down, attracts the fish. There's no food samples in that, but there certainly is on my hook. So that's the food, that's the reward they get for being attracted by the burley. Well, there's a few mosquitoes about this morning, and they're pretty big, so I'm always prepared for that. So one of the things I always have in my tackle bag is repellent, insect repellent. Just roll on, very, very easy to apply. Put it on the backs of your hands, on your face, and that. Do not put it on the front of your hand, because that will, if it gets on the bait, that'll get rid of the fish. The fish obviously are repelled by that as well. The other thing I always have is 2 towels. 2 of these little hand towels. I buy these in really big rolls, just tear off a piece, or I tear off 2 pieces when I go fishing. I have a dry one, because that's what you wipe the slime off with fish. Just remember, because they're in water, the slime doesn't actually wipe off in water. So I have a dry one to wipe that off, and then I have a damp one that is just used for generally just keeping my hands free and clean. And because I only have a single piece, they're only very small, and I have big rolls of them. I just throw it away when I get home and it's all dirty. I don't bother washing them. They break up after time anyway. But anyway, it just keeps your hand clean, so when you're touching all your gear and that, you can still keep your gear looking clean and professional, and it feels better anyway, not having hands that smell like a fish shop. It's taken me about an hour and a half to get my first bite. Wow. And I put quite a few casts in to get burley into the area. There's no wind, so I've been, and the forecast was for heavy winds today. That's why I'm in a bit of a sheltered spot. But anyway, there's not any wind at all, so I've been able to cast accurately. The wind has been blowing my casts off, so I'm using a marker on the other side of the river, targeting that, casting to that direction, landing it, so I'm landing in a fairly close area, getting the burley build up. That's worked well, as in that's been accurate. No bites for about an hour and a half, even probably an hour and 40 minutes. My first bite, I changed baits, and I was using prawn, I was using chicken, I was using maggots, and then what I did is I put a piece of chicken with a couple of worms on the hook as well. So the worms are moving around as well as having the chicken there, the smell of the spicy chicken that I was using. It took that long to get that bite. I got it, I'd hooked it, I got a couple of turns on my rod, on my reel, and I lost it. But at least I know it was a couple of the changes that I'd made that have actually interested the fish, but it's been very, very tough here. One thing I will say now, the water is still, it is like a lake. And so, unfortunately, you need a little bit of flow on a river to get the fish active. And while the tide has been rising, there's been no flow in the water. And that is unfortunate, because there's an old saying in fishing, no flow, no go. Well, unfortunately, I think that's happened a bit today. But at least I worked out like a combination bait, something moving like worms with the chicken, was enough to stimulate a fish on a day when they really don't want to eat. Something's happened. What is this? Don't even know. Oh my goodness. Oh. Wow. After all that time, finally got a fish in. Combination spicy chicken and worms, and boy, I am glad I've made so many changes to try and get a fish today. I am stoked. It's certainly not a marlin, but I tell you what, it just makes it worthwhile when you try a lot of different things and you finally get something that works. Okay, it might just be, I don't have much time left, it might be just one fish a day. Hooray! That's made my day, believe it or not. That last fish, last fish was quite a little bit confusing. I didn't know what I had. I had a couple of little hits on my rod, and then the line slackened off. So what had happened is the fish was actually moving towards me, so I had to reel in quite a bit. I didn't know what was happening, but then obviously I had the fish. It's been quite a morning. Tough day when you've got the conditions where there's no flow in the water. The water was rising, but there was just no movement at all. So you don't expect to get much when that's happening. Anyway, I kept getting the burley out into the same spot. I'd built enough in there to attract the fish. So I'd only got one bite before I got a couple of turns. Well, I had the fish on for a couple of turns of the reel and lost it. And then this one I got in. And on days when it's really, really hard, the finesse gear, the light line, the pre-stretched line, small hook, what I call my survival gear, that works well. If you want to just get a fish out on a tough day, then you've got to go down with the light gear. And it was a combination bait of a bit of chicken and a little bit of worm, so some movement. And I mean, these are small pieces. I had a single worm on there, and just a small piece of chicken dipped in my spicy chicken formula. So look, if you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. If you're interested in the gear I'm using, the survival pack, the burley cages, please have a look at my website, howtofish.com.au.